History's most devastating weapon was not a sword. It was not a cannon. It was never an army. It was a road. 8,000 kilometers long, connecting 3 continents, carrying gold, silk, and spices across its ancient paths. This road lifted empires to their greatest heights. It made kings wealthier than they ever dreamed possible. It built the largest cities the world had ever seen. And then that same road carried the deadliest catastrophe in human history. In a single wave, it killed 75 million people. But what you will learn by the end of this video is this. The closing of this road changed history far more than anything it ever carried while it was open. This is the story of the Silk Road. 138 BC. China's most powerful dynasty, the Han, was under relentless attack from the Xiongnu, fierce nomadic warriors from the north. Emperor Wu made a desperate decision. He sent a diplomat named Zhang Qian into lands no Chinese had ever seen. His mission was simple: forge an alliance with the peoples of the West. But what awaited him was far greater than any diplomatic assignment. Zhang Qian spent 13 years on the road. He was captured. He escaped. He was captured again. He escaped again. And when he finally returned to China, he did not bring back an alliance. He brought back something far more valuable: knowledge. He reported that wealthy civilizations existed in the West, that markets were willing to pay extraordinary prices for Chinese silk, and that routes connecting these distant lands already existed. When Emperor Wu heard this, he made the most strategic decision in Chinese history. He secured the westward routes. He established military garrisons. He mapped the caravan paths. The Silk Road was born. But the man who would give it that name wouldn't come along for another 2,000 years. In 1877, German geographer Ferdinand von Richthofen became the first to call this vast trade network Seidenstrasse. In English, the Silk Road. The Silk Road was never a single road. Northern routes, southern routes, maritime routes. It was an enormous web of dozens of different paths. It began in Xi'an, the ancient capital of China, cut through the heart of Central Asia, passed through Persia, reached the Mediterranean, and ended in Rome. And it didn't just carry silk. From China came silk, porcelain, and gunpowder. From India came spices, cotton, and precious stones. From Central Asia came horses, leather, and metal. And from the Mediterranean came glass, wine, and gold. But the most valuable cargo was none of these. It was ideas. Buddhism traveled this road from India to China. Islam spread across Central Asia along these very paths. The Nestorian branch of Christianity reached as far as China through these caravan routes. Papermaking, the compass, printing. The inventions that would shape the future of humanity changed hands on the dusty trails of the Silk Road. The cities along this route grew astonishingly wealthy. Samarkand, Bukhara, Kashgar, Palmyra. These were the New York, London, and Tokyo of their era. In Samarkand, a merchant could negotiate with a Chinese silk trader in the morning, strike a deal with an Indian spice merchant in the afternoon, and share wine with a Roman glassmaker by evening. The world believes globalization was invented in the 21st century. It wasn't. Globalization began 2,000 years ago on the Silk Road. The Roman Empire was the Silk Road's biggest customer. Roman aristocrats were so addicted to Chinese silk that the Senate tried to ban its import, not once, but multiple times. Why? Because Rome's gold and silver were draining relentlessly to the east. The historian Pliny wrote that every single year, over 100 million sesterces, billions of dollars in today's money, flowed from Rome to the Orient. An entire empire was going bankrupt because of its addiction to silk. This was the first great trade deficit in recorded history. And if it sounds familiar, it should. The debate over the trade imbalance between the West and China today traces its roots to this exact moment. History doesn't repeat itself. History walks in cycles, and those cycles were paved on the Silk Road. So who controlled this road? This is where the story turns bloody. To control the Silk Road was to control the greatest source of revenue on earth. The Gokturks fought for it. The Sassanids fought for it. Arabs, Chinese, Tibetans, they all waged war to seize even a fraction of this route. In 751 AD, at the Battle of Talas, the Abbasid Caliphate defeated the Chinese Tang army. But this battle didn't just shift borders. Among the Chinese prisoners of war were master papermakers, and so the technique of papermaking passed into the Islamic world, and from there, into Europe. A single battle launched a technology on a journey across continents, and that technology would eventually make the printing press possible, and the printing press would make the Renaissance possible. The year was 1206. On the Mongolian steppe, one man began building the largest empire the world had ever seen. His name was Genghis Khan. The Mongol Empire is the most paradoxical chapter in the history of the Silk Road, because the Mongols first burned every city along it to the ground. Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, all destroyed. Hundreds of thousands slaughtered. And then those same Mongols created the safest and most efficient era the Silk Road had ever known. It's called the Pax Mongolica, the Mongol Peace. Across this vast territory, stretching from China to Eastern Europe under one empire's control, a merchant could travel for months without encountering a single bandit. The Mongols built a postal relay system called the Yam. Stations were placed every 30 to 40 kilometers. Horses, messages, and goods moved across continents at extraordinary speed. It was during this era that Marco Polo journeyed from Venice to China. When he returned, no one believed a word he said. He described the splendor of Beijing, the existence of paper money, houses heated by burning black stones. Europeans thought he had lost his mind, but Marco Polo wasn't mad. China was centuries ahead of Europe at the time, and the Silk Road was the mirror that forced the West to confront that reality. But inside this golden age, an invisible threat had already set out on the road. The early 1340s. Across the steppes of Central Asia, a bacterium was quietly spreading among rodent populations. Its name, Yersinia pestis. This bacterium had existed throughout history, but never before had it traveled so fast or so far, because never before had the Silk Road operated this efficiently. The flawless trade network the Mongols had built became a flawless network of death. Fleas on caravan animals, rats on merchant ships, bacteria woven into traded fabrics, they were all carriers. The plague moved from Central Asia to Crimea, from Crimea aboard Genoese ships to Sicily, and from there across all of Europe. In 1347, the ships that docked at the port of Messina carried crews that were mostly dead. The survivors had black swellings on their bodies. Port authorities ordered the ships to leave, but it was already too late. Within 5 years, the Black Death wiped out a third of Europe's population. Some estimates say half, 75 million people dead. There weren't enough living to bury the dead. Entire villages were abandoned. The authority of the church was shattered because prayers had done nothing. The feudal system collapsed because there were no peasants left to work the land. The most valuable cargo the Silk Road ever carried was not gold. It was not silk. Its most devastating payload was a bacterium invisible to the naked eye. And after this catastrophe, nothing would ever be the same again. 1453. The Ottoman Empire conquered Constantinople. This was not merely the fall of an empire. It was the moment the Silk Road's most critical gateway to Europe changed hands. The Ottomans' control over the eastern Mediterranean, combined with the devastation Timur had already unleashed across Central Asia, made overland trade between East and West nearly impossible. The price of spices, silk, and gold in Europe skyrocketed, and it was at this exact moment that history produced its most unexpected consequence. With the Silk Road closed, Europeans were forced to find an alternative. They turned to the sea. In 1488, Bartolomeu Diaz rounded the southern tip of Africa. In 1498, Vasco da Gama reached India by sea. And in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed west, hoping to find Asia. What he found instead was an entirely new continent. Think about that for a moment. If the Silk Road had never closed, Europeans would have had no reason to explore the oceans. The Americas would not have been discovered, at least not then. Colonialism would never have begun. The Atlantic slave trade would never have existed. The world order we know today would simply not be. I told you at the beginning of this video, the closing of this road changed history far more than anything it ever carried while it was open. When the Silk Road died, the modern world was born. Today, China is undertaking the largest infrastructure investment in human history, the Belt and Road Initiative. Spanning more than 70 countries and costing trillions of dollars, This project aims to build a new Silk Road. The journey Zhang Qian began 2,000 years ago never truly ended. It simply changed form. The question is, will this new Silk Road build empires as the old one did, or will it destroy them? Financial Historian Academy. We follow the money through history.